The shocking truth, self-improvement starts with one simple shift. Once upon a time, in a quiet corner of the world, there was a man who had everything. He had the job, the house, the life that others envied. But every night when the world grew still, he felt a gnawing emptiness that couldn't be filled by any amount of success. His bank account overflowed, his relationship seemed perfect on the surface, and the house he lived in could have been pulled straight out of a magazine. Yet, when the lights dimmed and the world outside his window hushed to silence, an overwhelming void took its place. It wasn't that he didn't have everything, he did. He was living the kind of life others dreamt of. But somewhere deep down, he knew something wasn't right. Something was missing. And no matter how many new achievements he ticked off the list, that gnawing emptiness never left him. What he didn't know, what no one told him, was that his entire life, everything he had worked so hard for, was built on a lie so deeply embedded in the fabric of the world that it was impossible for him to see it, much less question it. It wasn't until that rainy evening, walking down an empty street, that everything changed. He had just come from yet another celebration, yet another victory. But there, in the cold, the dampness of the night around him somehow seemed to reflect the isolation he felt inside. As he walked, lost in thought, his gaze shifted, and he saw an old man standing by a cracked stone fountain in the middle of the street. There was something about the man, a quiet wisdom in his eyes that seemed ancient, as though he had lived 1,000 lifetimes. The man's gaze met his, and for the briefest moment, time seemed to slow. Without saying a word, the old man simply spoke. The key to self-improvement isn't what you think it is. The words hit him like a wave, a cold, sharp, unsettling truth. He stopped dead in his tracks, trying to process the statement. There was something about the old man's eyes, something that hinted at secrets, real secrets, life-changing ones. And in that moment, he felt like his entire existence had been flipped upside down. It wasn't some motivational speech or a phrase you'd find plastered on a self-help book cover. No, it was a quiet, unassuming truth that felt almost forbidden. The key to self-improvement isn't what you think it is. The man paused, looking down at his feet. He had been running, fighting, striving for everything the world told him he needed. Every goal he had set, every accomplishment he had racked up, each of them had been a piece of the puzzle he thought would complete him. And yet, he still felt this void. The old man stood motionless, his hands clasped behind his back, waiting for the man to speak. There was no rush, no urgency in his demeanor, but his presence was magnetic. The man, though filled with 1,000 questions, couldn't bring himself to ask them. He could only feel the weight of the statement, like a seed planting itself in the soil of his mind. The key to self-improvement isn't what you think it is. That phrase lingered in the air, echoing like a distant song. He wanted to shout out, to demand what it meant, to understand why everything he had worked for felt incomplete. But something held him back. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was the way the man's eyes glowed under the dim streetlight. Whatever it was, the man felt like he was on the edge of something profound. "You've spent your whole life building, haven't you?" the old man asked, almost as if reading his mind. The man nodded, his throat dry. "Everything you've worked for." The old man's voice trailed off, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if weighing his next words. "It's all built on the wrong foundation." The man was taken aback. "What do you mean?" The old man smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was knowing. It was a smile that suggested the man had just learned a painful, uncomfortable truth. The kind of truth that forces you to confront the very core of your beliefs. "Everyone's so focused on doing, aren't they?" the old man continued. "Everyone's chasing the next thing, the next achievement, the next accolade. They think that by doing more, they'll somehow become more. But it's not about doing, it's about being, and you've forgotten that." The words sank in, deeper than anything he had ever heard. Being. It was such a simple word, and yet it felt like it contained the weight of the universe. All his life he had been focused on doing, working, achieving, climbing higher. But all that effort, it hadn't brought him the peace, the fulfillment, the satisfaction he so desperately craved. The old man didn't wait for him to respond. He simply turned and began to walk down the street, disappearing into the fog that had started to roll in. And just like that, the man's world was never the same. Over the next few days, he couldn't shake the old man's words. It's about being. The idea sat heavily with him. He began to question everything he had been taught, all the advice he had heard, all the articles, books, and seminars telling him to hustle harder, push further, climb higher. They all told him to do more, but the old man had told him something different. Be more. He tried to ignore it, to go back to his life, to distract himself with more tasks, more accomplishments, but it was like a thorn in his side. Everywhere he went, he felt the whisper of those words tugging at his consciousness. It's about being. It's about being. Days turned into weeks, and the man began to notice something. The harder he tried to achieve, the more hollow it felt. But when he allowed himself to simply be, when he stopped trying to prove himself and allowed himself to sit with his thoughts, to reflect, to exist without constantly striving, something inside him began to shift. At first, it was subtle, like the soft rustle of leaves on a quiet afternoon. He didn't notice the change right away, but soon enough, his perspective began to change. He stopped pushing so hard. He stopped measuring his worth by the number of things he could check off a list. Instead, he started to see the value in simply existing, in being present, in appreciating the small moments. And in that shift, he realized something that shook him to his core. The shift didn't just change how he saw the world, it changed how the world saw him. He became more magnetic. People began to be drawn to him, not because of his achievements, but because of the energy he exuded. He no longer felt the need to prove anything. His relationships deepened, his work became more inspired, and his sense of fulfillment grew. Not because he was doing more, but because he was finally being the person he had always wanted to become. And it all started with one simple shift, a shift in perspective, a shift from doing to being. What was the one thing that held him back? It wasn't a lack of knowledge or effort. It was the belief that success and happiness came from external achievements, from the constant race for more. But when he learned to simply be, to embrace the present moment, everything else fell into place. So here's the truth. Self-improvement doesn't start with more. It starts with less. It starts with embracing who you are, as you are, right now. It starts with a shift in how you see yourself and the world around you. When you stop running, stop pushing, and start being, you'll realize that everything you've been searching for was always right there, waiting for you to find it. Now, what will you do with that knowledge? Will you keep chasing, or will you finally stop and take a breath? Let me know in the comments what part of this journey resonated with you the most. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this story with them. You never know who might be waiting for their own simple shift. Next time, we'll dive even deeper into the unexpected truth behind personal transformation. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.